Hi, my name is Ayla Kanow, and I'm a senior at the Telluride High School. And this summer, I studied neuroscience at the Scripps Institute in La Jolla, California. So to begin, my mentors were Dr. Niraj Lal and Dr. Yi Lee. I worked at a very diverse lab, and I was actually the only white student at the lab, which was a really cool experience coming from Telluride, which doesn't have as much diversity as a big city like San Diego. My lab was very inclusive, and we did a lot of things outside of experiments and lab work. Every Friday we went to the beach and got kombucha, and we played a lot of table tennis. They really liked that. So it was a very exciting experience. So I studied how metabolism affects the brain, and at my lab they're trying to target what region of the brain gets targeted to make when you're hungry or when you're not hungry. So in the long run, they're trying to figure out what causes you to not want to eat and anorexia, and what makes you not be able to stop eating, so obesity. And over time, they're trying to figure out how they can cure both of those. Next. So I learned a lot at my lab. I was there for a month, but my main takeaways that I was really proud of learning was how to use a vibratome, which is a vibrating machine with a little blade at the end, and it vibrates back and forth, and it slices the brains of the mice I was working with, and they sliced them at 100 microns, which is a very thin cut. It's thinner than a piece of paper. I also learned how to mount the slides, and to later image. I got to use their really cool and expensive microscope, something I'd never really seen before. I learned how to do perfusions, which is essentially euthanizing the mice to extract their brains, which was pretty gruesome, but it was a cool experience because it has a lot to do with science. And then I also got to perform a swim experiment, which I watched, poked and prodded at mice as they swam in these buckets for 30 minutes, and then I measured their food intake. So some visuals. The first machine is the vibratome. The second machine is the brain slices. Like I said, they're very thin, very small. And then me mounting the slides. My lab was very creative. They used clear nail polish to put the top sheet of glass on. And they also used a paintbrush because the slices are so thin to move them onto the glass. And then that's the final image of the brain. Next. So this is the final image of what the brain looks like with their really high-tech microscope. And the brain is green because they inject the mice with a special virus to make their brains light up under the microscope. Next. So this is a little closer view, and that circle of neurons is that region of the brain that's firing for different experiments. So on my free time, next. You're good. On my free time, I was lucky enough to have a roommate, Kate, from Montrose. So I got to hang out with her quite a bit. I got to see a lot of beautiful sunsets, and I attended a soccer recruiting camp and got to play for some scouts in California. So I think my biggest takeaway from this is that it's a life experience. It's a STEM internship, but it's also an experience to get out of Telluride and learn how to live as a young adult in a city. So I learned how to bike to and from my lab in a crowded city. I learned how to take Uber. And I think my biggest takeaway was my homestay experience was not the best homestay experience, so I really learned how to go with my gut and get myself out of a situation that I wasn't very comfortable in being. So overall, it was a great life experience. Next. My biggest pieces of advice for future Pinterns is advocate for yourself. If there's something that you want to learn, make sure it's said in the interview process so that you get to actually study something that you're fascinated in and that's worth your time. Take it as a learning experience. You might get to the lab and realize that lab work isn't for you, and that's completely fine because you're learning that this experience is something you don't want to pursue in the future, so it's just as valuable. Be a good communicator. You get to the lab, and of course, you don't know anything compared to these people because they're the smartest people in their fields, and you're working with PhDs and doctors, but make sure that you communicate with them, ask the questions you need to be answered, check your email regularly, be concise, be respectful, and just enjoy every minute of it. Thanks. I'd like to give a big thank you to Dr. Niraj Lal and Dr. Yi Lee and everyone at their lab at the Doris Neuroscience Center, the Pinhead Institute, my mom and dad, some family friends, the Frumovitzes, and Mario and Viviana, who I stayed with for a portion of my experience. Thank you.